Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a topic that's, well, it's really a shortcut to understanding how the world around us works. Whether you're running a business, working somewhere, or just, buying things, which is pretty much everyone. We're talking about the marketing environment. Essentially, all those external forces constantly swirling around organizations, they influence everything from where companies get resources to how they actually create and sell their products.
That's absolutely right. And for any organization, looking closely at this environment isn't just a nice to have, it's frankly crucial. These influences, they aren't static. They're always shifting, creating both huge opportunities and sometimes really significant threats. So to navigate all this, organizations use a couple of key tools. First, there's environmental scanning, that's basically collecting the information. And then environmental analysis, which is all about making sense of it, interpreting what it means. So in this deep dive, we'll explore these forces: competitive, economic, political, legal, and regulatory, technological, and sociocultural. We won't just explain what they are, but really why they matter to you, how they shape your choices, maybe your job, the innovations you see.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit more. The marketing environment, at its heart, it's all those outside forces, right?
Yeah.
Things that directly or indirectly influence how a company gets its inputs. We're talking people, money, raw materials, information.
Exactly. And then how they turn those inputs into outputs, the goods, services, or even ideas they offer to the world. It's the whole stage they operate on.
Right.
And because it's always changing, it's not enough just to watch. Marketers really have to try and forecast what might happen next. Environmental scanning, like you said, is that systematic gathering of intel.
Yeah.
Could be just observing trends, reading industry reports, or maybe even doing specific market research. Then comes the environmental analysis. That's where you sift through it all, assess it, figure out what's important, and spot those potential threats or maybe those golden opportunities hidden in the changes.
So once they have this information, this analysis, how do companies actually respond? What are the main approaches?
Well, there are really two main camps, you could say. Some marketers see these forces as, well, totally uncontrollable. They take a passive approach, reactive, just adjusting as things happen.
Okay, just roll with the punches.
Pretty much. But
Yeah.
then you've got the proactive ones. These are the managers who believe, maybe counterintuitively, that they can influence these forces, at least somewhat. They're not just adapting, they're actively seeking out new market opportunities or trying to get more out of the ones they already have. Energizer is often cited as a company that really tries to shape its environment, not just react to it.
That leads us neatly into one of the biggest, most immediate forces, competition. Now, most people think of competitors as just the direct rivals, the obvious ones. But it's more complex than that, isn't it? What are some of the other, maybe less obvious types of competition businesses face?
Oh, absolutely. It's a much richer picture than just head-to-head rivals. We usually break it down into 4 types, and understanding all of them is key. First, you have brand competitors. These are the ones you mentioned, like Sierra Nevada versus, say, New Belgium Brewing. Similar products, similar prices, targeting the same folks. Buyers see them as direct substitutes.
Right, the classic showdowns.
Exactly, but then you zoom out a bit. Next are product competitors. They're in the same general product class, but offer different features, benefits, or prices. So for Sierra Nevada, a product competitor might be a bottle of wine, or maybe a margarita, still an alcoholic beverage, but different.
Okay, broader category.
Then it gets really interesting with generic competitors. These offer very different products that solve the same basic problem or satisfy the same need. So Sierra Nevada versus tap water or milk. They all quench thirst, right?
Never thought of it that way. Tap water is a competitor to beer.
It absolutely can be, depending on the need. And finally, total budget competitors. These are competing for the same limited pool of the customer's money. So choosing that Sierra Nevada might mean not buying, chewing gum or a movie ticket. It's about the customer's overall spending decisions. It's fascinating because many companies focus almost entirely on those brand competitors, but sometimes the real threat comes from these other, less direct forms.
Wow, that definitely broadens the definition of who you're up against. Beyond who the competitors are, there are also different market structures, right? Like monopolies, oligopolies.
Yeah.
How do those fit in?
Yeah, the structure of the market itself is a huge factor. Think of a monopoly often like your local electric company, the only provider. Then an oligopoly, where just a few large firms dominate, like major airlines or modal carriers. Their actions really impact each other.
Right.
Monopolistic competition is super common. Think of restaurants or coffee shops. Lots of competitors, but they try hard to differentiate themselves. And then pure competition, which is almost theoretical now. Maybe a farmer's market where everyone's selling identical apples and only price matters. The number of sellers drastically changes the competitive dynamics.
It's interesting you mentioned monopolies. We've seen Google and Microsoft face accusations, especially in the EU, where antitrust rules are stricter. Microsoft had that long battle over web browsers, and the EU has even talked about breaking up parts of Google.
Mm.
So is having a monopoly always inherently bad for us, the consumers?
That's a really nuanced question. The gut reaction is often, yes, it limits choice, could lead to unfair prices or practices. But sometimes having a dominant standard like Windows or Google Search can actually create convenience. It fosters a whole ecosystem of products and services built around that standard. The real issue isn't usually the monopoly itself, but potential abuse of that dominant position actions that actively block competition rather than just being the best. It's a tough line for regulators to walk.
Yeah, a very fine line. So for marketers, the takeaway is constant vigilance. You need to monitor what your major competitors are doing, understand their strategies, and anticipate how it might affect you.
Absolutely. Ongoing competitive intelligence is vital.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the economy. How do those broader economic conditions ripple out and affect both what marketers do and, well, your everyday buying decisions?
Oh, economic forces are fundamental. They shape everything. We generally see the economy move in cycles, usually 4 stages. First is prosperity. Unemployment's low, incomes are high, people feel confident spending. Marketers often expand their product lines, push distribution, ramp up promotion.
Good times.
Right? Then you might hit a recession. Unemployment rises, people have less buying power, they get cautious. Marketers then often shift focus to value, utility. Maybe they do more research to figure out what people really need now.
Makes sense. Cut back on the luxuries.
Exactly. And then, worst case, a depression. Really high unemployment, low wages, rock bottom disposable income, very little confidence. Spending just plummets. Thankfully, after recession or depression, we eventually move into recovery. The economy starts picking up. Marketers need to be really flexible here, ready to adjust as confidence and spending power slowly return.
You mentioned buying power. Let's
Yeah.
break that down. It's not just your salary, is it?
Not at all. Income is the raw money coming in, wages, rent, investments, whatever. But what marketers really care about is disposable income. That's what's left after taxes, for spending or saving. And even more specifically, discretionary income. That's the money left after you've covered the absolute basics. Food, clothes, shelter. That's the money people choose how to spend, and that's what companies are competing for.
And things like credit complicated too.
Yeah.
Letting you spend future income now.
Precisely. Credit impacts your current buying power versus your future buying power. And don't forget wealth, your accumulated assets, savings, property. That also boosts your ability to buy, especially larger items.
So you have the ability to buy, but then there's the willingness to buy. What drives that?
Right, that's willingness to spend. It's your inclination to actually part with your money because you expect satisfaction from a product or service. It's tied to your buying power, obviously, but also the product's price and value, how happy you are with stuff you already own, and crucially, your outlook. Your expectations about your future job security, income, the overall economy that massively influences your willingness to spend, especially on big-ticket items. Marketers watch indicators like the Consumer Confidence Index, the CCI, very closely. It helps them predict spending patterns. If CCI drops, people might hold off on buying that new car or taking a big vacation.
That reminds me of the Dollar General example. They've seen incredible growth, opening stores like crazy while others struggle. How are they tapping into these economic forces?
Dollar General is a fascinating case. Their strategy is laser-focused on value and convenience, particularly in rural and lower-income suburban areas where traditional retail might be sparse. Offering prices significantly lower than grocery or drug stores resonates deeply during uncertain economic times or for consumers with limited discretionary income.
But they still face threats, right? Even with that success.
Oh, for sure. Giants like Walmart and Amazon are always competitors. And there's this interesting development with the FDA piloting online grocery purchases using food assistance benefits. That could potentially pull some of Dollar General's core customers towards competitors with better online options, which is currently a weakness for them.
So how are they responding?
They're doing several things: cutting prices further on key items, boosting pay for store managers to keep good staff, expanding their own private label brands, which offer better margins, and even adding more fresh food options to draw people in more often. It really shows how they're adapting to both economic pressures and competitive moves.
It's a constant balancing act. Which brings us to another complex area, the interconnected world of politics, laws, and regulations. How do these shape what marketers can and can't do?
It's a really tangled web and hugely influential. Organizations have to stay on good terms with elected officials. Why? Because politicians can pass laws that directly impact business, they control government purchasing, which is massive, and they can even affect access to international markets.
So companies try to influence politics.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Sometimes through public campaigns or protests, but more often through things like campaign contributions. There was actually a major Supreme Court decision that removed limits on corporate political spending, which arguably increases their potential influence. And of course, lobbying is a huge industry trying to persuade officials directly.
Then there are the actual laws.
Yeah.
You have laws designed to keep competition fair.
Right. Yes, that's pro-competitive legislation. Things like the Sherman Antitrust Act are meant to prevent monopolies and unfair business practices to keep the playing field somewhat level. And then there's a whole category of consumer protection legislation. Federal and state laws covering product safety, warning about hazardous materials, demanding clear information, regulating specific marketing tactics like advertising or pricing, all aimed at protecting you, the consumer.
And who enforces all this?
That falls to various regulatory agencies. The Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, is probably the big one for marketing. They have broad powers to crack down on false advertising, misleading prices, deceptive packaging. They can issue cease and desist orders, forcing companies to stop a practice, and even mandate corrective advertising if consumers were misled. Plus, there are many other agencies focused on specific industries. Food, drugs, finance, and states have their own consumer protection bodies too.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of oversight. So, faced with all that, sometimes industries try to regulate themselves. Things like the Better Business Bureau, the BBB, or advertising review boards.
Exactly. Self-regulation is quite common. Often the motivation is basically to preempt stricter government rules. If the industry shows it can police itself, maybe the government won't feel the need to step in so heavy-handedly.
But does it work? What are the pros and cons of self-regulation versus government rules?
That's the key question. The advantages are that self-regulation can be cheaper, potentially more flexible, and the guidelines might be more practical since they come from industry insiders. It can also reduce government bureaucracy. But the downsides are significant too. It's usually voluntary, so not every company joins in. The enforcement power might be weak. They often can't impose fines or legal penalties. And sometimes the self-imposed rules might just not be as tough as government regulations would be. It's a trade-off.
Okay, moving on to another massive force, technology. We know it's about applying knowledge and tools to solve problems more efficiently, but its impact seems to be accelerating like crazy.
Exponentially is the word. Technology's impact is incredibly pervasive. It fundamentally shapes how we meet our basic needs. It's revolutionized communication globally. It constantly creates new opportunities for entrepreneurs to disrupt old ways of doing things. And for marketers, it's totally changed how they reach consumers, mobile devices, the internet, e-commerce, targeted advertising. It's a different world.
But not without its downsides.
Yeah.
Concerns about privacy, protecting ideas.
Definitely. Those are huge issues. The power of tech comes from a few key things. Its dynamics, that constant rapid change that often challenges existing institutions and norms, its reach, how it spreads into almost every aspect of life, and its self-sustaining nature, how new technology often sparks even faster development of more new technology. It feeds itself.
You really see this intensity in things like the big patent battles like Apple versus Samsung that went on for years.
Yeah.
That's a very visible fight over protecting technological innovation, isn't it?
Precisely. It highlights how critical intellectual property is in the tech world. Protecting those innovations is core to maintaining market share and driving future development. It's high-stakes stuff. And think about that Facebook psychological experiment controversy from a few years back. That connects directly to technology, too. Big data and analytics allow for behavioral research on a scale never possible before, but it also sharply raises consumer expectations about privacy. What Facebook did might have been technically legal under U.S. law at the time, but it triggered a massive public backlash. And the legal implications would likely be different somewhere like the UK with stricter data privacy laws. Shows how tech, law, and social norms interact.
That leads perfectly into our final area, Sociocultural forces. These are the influences from society and culture changing attitudes, beliefs, norms, customs, lifestyles. How do these play out?
They manifest in so many ways. Look at demographics and diversity first. We have an aging population in many Western countries, more single-person households with unique spending habits. We've seen birth rates fall the baby bust. And societies, particularly the U.S., are becoming much more multicultural due to immigration. All these shifts force marketers to adapt. They need different products, different messages, different ways of reaching diverse groups.
And cultural values themselves change too, right?
Absolutely. Think about the huge emphasis now on health, nutrition, exercise. The source mentioned the protein bar restaurant chain, a perfect example of a business thriving by meeting that cultural demand for healthier food options. Family structures are evolving too, though kids often still play a big role in purchasing decisions. And there's the massive growth in environmental awareness, green marketing. Walmart's sustainability index, tracking the environmental impact of products they sell, is a direct response to consumers demanding more sustainable choices.
So consumers are pushing back, demanding more.
Yes, and that ties into consumerism. This isn't just about buying stuff. It's the organized effort by people and groups to protect consumer rights. It happens through writing letters, lobbying, public service announcements, boycotts. People are more aware and more vocal. And circling back to that Facebook study again, the backlash wasn't just about the technology or the legality. It was deeply rooted in evolving sociocultural expectations about privacy and ethical treatment online. That social pressure was immense.
So when you step back and look at all these forces, competitive, economic, political, legal, tech, socio-cultural, it's clear they're not separate boxes. They're all tangled together, constantly influencing each other and shaping the whole business landscape. Understanding these dynamics really helps make sense of so much more than just marketing. It helps you understand why the world works the way it does.
Exactly. If you connect this to the bigger picture, the ability to, scan the environment, analyze what you're seeing, and then respond strategically, that's not just a skill for marketers. It's vital for anyone trying to grasp societal trends, economic shifts, technological changes. It's about trying to anticipate what's coming next, not just dealing with today.
Thinking about everything we've unpacked today, what's one area of the marketing environment you're going to be watching more closely from now on?